Hey, this is Dave from MetalEpidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up guys, Dave here from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review, joined by Duncan and Kyle. And for this review, Duncan, Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from San Fransisco quintet, Deafheaven. The band's new album, Infinite Granite, will be released on August 20th via Sargent House. So, gentlemen, we've been excited for this. We've been excited. A little bit excited. This is album number 5 from Deafheaven, which comes about 3 years since Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. Although we did have that little kind of live kind of studio album in between, just to keep us going. The album was produced by Justin Meldal-Johnsen and Jack Shirley, who helped produce every previous Deafheaven album. He remained on board to engineer Infinite Granite at his Atomic Garden East studio in Oakland. Additional engineering and mixing came from 9-time Granny Award winner. Did I say Granny there? I think I said Granny.
I love the idea of someone getting a Granny Award.
Grammy Award. Daryl Thorpe, who has worked with Foo Fighters, Radiohead and Beck, to name a few. I can't go over. I said Granny there. I think this is like one of those albums that everyone will be kind of intrigued to hear. Even if you're really not a fan of Deafheaven, I think there'll be people that want to hear how this sounds. I've been a fan of the band for probably about 8 or 9 years, and I've loved pretty much most of what they've done, to be honest. But I think I especially love how they kind of took a genre like black metal and kind of made it more accessible in a way. But if you've heard any of the singles from this album, you be aware that this is not a standard Deafheaven album. This is there's a marked departure from that post-black sound that they've become known for. I can't say I'm hugely surprised, to be honest, that they've moved in a new direction. They've always kind of toyed with like a cleaner, more ambient side on their albums, and you could probably hear that coming through even more on that last album. Not so much vocally, but musically on the tracks. On tracks like Near, where they went like full clean and shoegazy. So I'm not shocked that this is the kind of way they've decided to go. It kind of feels like a kind of natural kind of evolution, to be honest. I think the difference with this one though is they have fully committed to it. You know, these are actual songs, you know, rather than just big spiraling pieces of melody and atmosphere. These tracks have more of a structure to them, and a lot more of the kind of melodic stuff than they've done in the past. And obviously now they've got clean vocals being added to the mix, or more clean vocals being added to the mix by George Clark. It feels more complete on this one. But what I felt when I was listening to this album was this isn't really an album about riffs at all. To be honest, they were never really a riff-heavy band. Mm-hmm. You know, even listening to their previous albums. But this kind of new side of the band and this new album is even less about riffs, and it's more about kind of textures and layers, and how they can kind of still manage to build a track to that peak without the use of distortion or blast beats or screaming vocals. And I was kind of like I'd heard a couple of the singles, and I was worried slightly that this may be an album that ends up sounding like one really long song, but it doesn't at all. They've somehow still managed to give each track on this album its own identity. Like after a few listens to this, I was able to pick out the tracks, no problem. They feel like individual tracks, but they all flow into each other fantastically. And they cleverly use, little intros here and there on some of the songs. That they all sound slightly different to each other, or they'll use like a nice little interlude, like Neptune, Rain and Diamonds. But I thought that really helped create a kind of start and end point to each track and give them their own kind of unique identity. But what I loved about this was the fact that they could still build these tracks into some kind of climax without the need for that more like ferocious side of the band. Like each track on this still felt really rewarding. I still felt like there was like a kind of pinnacle on each track. I think it's really clever the way that they build the kind of guitar patterns with the synths. And there's lots of different nice vocal layers, and then they have the drums that just kind of simmer away in the background, building up to that moment where they kind of let it all out. And there's a really great moment on a track called Villain, where George Clark does kind of let that kind of darker side out, and kind of reverts back to some of the kind of older material. He goes into that kind of really bleak, kind of visceral tone. That's reminiscent of those old albums, and when it happens, it really kind of hits you because you've not had any of that, for on the album at all. And this is like track 6, and I love that. I love that moment that when that actually happened. I was like, whoa, wait a minute, where did that come from? Because we've not had any kind of aggressive or kind of screamy vocals at all on the album, and it happens again on the closing track. And again, it had so much more of an effect because they don't overuse it, and it's surrounded by all this really like clean shoegazy melody and atmosphere. The track after Villain, though, was actually one of my favourite tracks on the album, a track called The Gnashing, which is a pretty cool title. It was probably one of the more kind of like punky and kind of direct type tracks, less of a kind of one of those kind of gradual build-up tracks which they do. And it was more kind of up-tempo, in terms of the pace, but it had this really cool like post-punk kind of vibe running through it, that I just really kind of got on board with. I really like that kind of style. Vocally as well is very catchy, which quite a few of the tracks are pretty catchy on this, vocally, but it's weird because I felt like when I was listening to them, the choruses or the catchy moments on these tracks don't feel like they're meant to be the focal point of the song, if that makes sense. Like a lot of pop songs are, they're written around that big vocal hook, but these melodies and lyrics, although they didn't feel like that for me, they still got caught in my head. After it, I was still singing little lines from tracks from the album, and I think like the kind of dreamy kind of production kind of aided a lot of that as well. The other thing about this is going to work extremely well in a live set alongside their older material. I can totally imagine this stuff being kind of slotted in between tracks from Sunbather or Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. I think dynamically it's going to be really amazing to hear those kind of albums brought together, and the contrast between the tracks will work wonders. I was not disappointed with this album at all. I was a little bit worried because I'm a huge fan of their past work, but I really enjoyed this. I think it gets more rewarding the more you listen to it, and you kind of you just kind of immerse yourself in those tracks. I think it's another great album that Deafheaven have kind of added to their catalogue. It's a really intoxicating listen is how I would describe it. The kind of textures and the sounds that they use are just kind of perfectly balanced against each other. So yeah, it was thoroughly enjoyable. I enjoyed it probably more than I thought I was going to, because I'm such a big fan of that kind of previous style. But yeah, not disappointed in the slightest. Duncan, what yourself? What did you think? You were quite interested in this from the singles that had come out.
Oh, from the off, yeah. This is hitting a lot of sweet spots for me. Very much like yourself, I've been a fan of Deafheaven probably since Sunbather, when they actually came to my attention, where everyone was touting that album as one of the best albums of the year. Yeah. And it was primarily because they did mix that kind of shoegazy element in with this kind of post-black metal sound. So you were getting all the kind of viscerality, I don't know if that's a word that is now, a kind of viscerality of the kind of black metal tones. But they were kind of fused with these huge like swaths of whimsy which you get with kind of shoegaze. And since then, they're a band that, like, whenever they have anything coming out, you know, it's on my radar. They have my full attention. But like you say, they've been toying with these moments for a while now, and it's so interesting because this year we've already reviewed the Genghis Tron album, which is from a band that toyed with a lot of different things, but were known primarily for being very chaotic, very disjointed, and very, very aggressive. And then he came away with an album which is not fully devoid, but pretty much mostly devoid of that, and created an album which was kind of based on textures and shades and this balance between like ambience and light. And that's exactly what Deafheaven have done. And it's kind of why I love this. It touches on, like, there are so many groups that I can kind of see remind me in elements that Deafheaven are trying to do. There's like small bits of Morrissey in here. There's definitely bits of Echo and the Bunnymen. There's like elements of bands like Interpol. If you've listened to their stuff in the kind of like early 2000s, there's elements of that as well. The kind of 80s indie vibe about it, whilst also definitely kind of reveling in some of the more kind of obscure ambient stuff that Deftones do. It's Deftones that influence every band now. That's all in there. You know, it's all in there for everyone to see. But what I really liked about this one is just the listen. It's the listen to this one is, I think it's really captivating. It has no real intensity out with. I think the heaviest you get is on Mombasa at the end, where they have it's like a 2-minute kind of black metal screamathon at the end. And you're right, they touch on it in Villain. They touch on it as well vocally at the very end in the background of Great Massive Colour, where he does a little bit of scream, but it's so buried in the mix. It's just for contrast against what the music's playing. He doesn't have the biggest vocal range, melodically speaking, that you would expect from this sort of music, but it fits perfectly. Like he never hits any one note that like haunts me when he does it. But I'll give them all their credit right now. Every chorus on this is catchy. Like really, really, really catchy and really well placed. I love the production on this. There is a really kind of retro 80s thing going on. Specifically, once again, I seem to mention this a lot these days. The drum and bass in particular, I really, really like. It has that kind of, once again, that 80s indie vibe that I kind of gravitate to. But then there are moments in here that, by the time you get to the instrumental track 4, Neptune Raining Diamonds, that to me sounds like it could have been done by, like, I was listening to it, there were certain uses of certain synth sounds that were 2 steps away from like the Midsommar soundtrack by Bobby Krullick, where it was very similar tones and they were building in a particular way. It just evoked that for me. There's intensity without the songs ever necessarily being intense. It's just the way they shape up and they elevate. I think Great Mass of Colour is maybe on track for my most listened to song this year. I fucking love that song. I like the chorus is amazing. I think this album delivers not what fans of Deafheaven probably want. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people, and they know who they are, they're on the internet, a lot of people are going to be turned off by this album. But I think if you listen to Deafheaven for all the other stuff they did, out with all the screaming that they did, then you're going to really, really like this album. I also think it's going to bring in a much bigger crowd for them. I also, it's not that I fully disagree with what you said. I think this is too much of a jump from the last album. I think like they've almost it's not even that they've just inverted the balance of the kind of melody stuff to the heavy stuff. It's so far in the other direction that I love it. I don't know if they'll stick with it. I hope they do. Even the title, everything about it is playful. I mean, Infinite Granite sounds heavy as fuck, You know, that to me sounds like it should be the heaviest. It's like the heaviest matter in the universe. You know, when you hear that as the name of a song and then it kicks in, you're like, yes, this is the heaviest matter in the universe. You know what I mean? Infinite Granite to me just sounds like, when we consider what granite is, it's cold and it's grey. You know, I mean, the fact it says Infinite Granite makes me think of a room full of concrete, and it's like a grey box. And I listen to this album and it is so colourful and vibrant and engaging. Intoxicating is the word you use, and I agree with that. I've listened to this album, I've lost count how many times. I play it almost on loop. I think it is like a triumph to the band. I think it might not necessarily be the best album that they've ever done, but I think 20 years from now, this is the album they'll be remembered for. I think people will come back and say Infinite Granite was the point where the band essentially... It's like when you listen to... And black metal bands do the same. It's something about the genre. Black metal bands go so far to a certain point, and then before you know it, it's all ambient and folky, right? It's weird. It's just like a tipping point where they're like, well, we're as extreme as we can, and it's noisy and nonsensical, and then the next thing that comes out is like, all right. And I think they've done the same. I think they took that the level of extremity they were experimenting with. They've taken it as far as they can, and they then got captivated by the stuff that was the stuff in the background. And now they're exploring that side, and to me that is the much more interesting side about the band. It's what hooked me in the first time I listened to them, and now I get a whole album of it. I think this is fucking great, like unabashedly fucking great. I'll be listening to this album for years and years to come. I think this is, it's maybe not the Deafheaven album that everyone wanted, but it's definitely the one I wanted, so.
Excellent. And Kyle, what about yourself? What did you think of this?
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I thought this album was amazing. Having never heard a Deafheaven album before in my life, not even kidding, this is the first I've ever actually sat down and heard them, and listened to them. I probably heard them in the background of some guy's house, or I don't know, something, you know. But because they're quite well known, I've always heard the name, you know, thrown about all the time. They've been on the go for a while. How many albums do they have?
This is the 5th, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, so they've been on the go for a while, and I didn't even know what genre they were in. So when you said was it last week or the week before? You said, "Oh, they're kind of post black metal." I was like, "Oh, great!" And I'm getting.
They were on the cusp of that though. Like, see that that's a term that's flung around loads now. Is post black metal? Like Deafheaven were like one of the first bands to be tagged with the. And rightly tagged with the post black metal, in that they were using it, but using other stuff around it. In an interesting way, like post metal, you know, it's not. It goes in those textures and tones out with that sound, or post rock. Like they were one of the first ones where it actually made sense, because that you know, other bands were tagged as post black metal, and I'm like, no, that's black metal. No, we're on about here.
That's just straight black metal.
Yeah, I don't know what we're doing here, guys, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I mean, this took me a few listens to get into properly. The first time I listened to it, I was in a bad mood, but I was like, this just sounds like budget Smashing Pumpkins, you know? I was like, and I fucking hate Smashing Pumpkins. I wish they never became a band.
Yes, Kale.
Billy Corgan is the whiniest motherfucker I've ever heard recorded, and I wish he'd just fuck off and stay there. Anyway, no, but I gave it, you know, I thought maybe I was in a bad mood, whatever. I always give every album a few listens, and every listen I picked up new things to like and picked up new things to get into. I still think the back half of this album, like track 5 onwards, is definitely better for me than the front half. I think there's a bit too much of the clean, strummy. It's a bit one-trick pony for me. Every now and then it's just like, okay, can you do a different strumming pattern or something? But I know where they're coming from. It's very ambient, and I like the way they build the songs, like you said before. Yeah. I really do like this, all the ambience and everything. It kind of builds to a sort of crescendo, and then just sort of, you know, then it's either the end of the song or they trail it off, and it's really nice. What I really love about it is the synth work. There's a lot of very... It's I wouldn't say hard to pick out, but you kind of notice them. If you're listening for it, you'll notice it for a second. You go, oh, that's been there the whole time. I really like that quite a lot. Yeah. And I like how they have put some of the heaviest sort of stuff in, but it's not super heavy, which just makes it hit harder because the rest of the stuff is so light and so it's exactly what it's like. It's light and it's ambient and it's shoegazy and it meanders a bit and it sits down and makes you think. And I quite like the way they've constructed all their songs, even though I thought the front half was a bit samey, a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the back half was definitely much, much better. I think Villain and The Gnashing Word definitely go-to songs for me on this album. I think if they did more stuff like The Gnashing on the album, I'd probably be happier with it. But I can't say it's a bad album at all. I really did enjoy it by the third, fourth listen. But the first couple, I was like, oh, come on. But no, I think considering how Deafheaven, as far as I understand, sound more like the back half of that last song than anything else in their previous albums, I think if fans of the band should give it a few listens before they knock it off, because obviously they want more of that kind of stuff and they're not going to get it. They're going to get what they're doing now, which I think is a fantastic way for the band to go. They really do it well. And if they've explored it before in parts of songs and things before in the past, then absolutely they should just do what they want, and bands should be allowed to evolve. And if it doesn't work for them, maybe they'll go back to doing what they are known for, but maybe not. Maybe they'll just go, fuck you all. But no, I think fans of the band that want more of the same probably should definitely give this more of a shot than just giving it one listen and going, oh fuck, it's not the same. They should absolutely give it a few listens, let it grow on them, because that's what I had to do the first time I listened to it. I was not a fan, really, except for the last couple of songs. But the more I listened to it, the more I loved it. So, I mean, there's parts of it that's still stuck in my head. They're not really songs to be made catchy, but there are definitely melodies and passages and parts in there that stick in, and it's great. So, and you've got to dig into the album. You can't just give it a listen in passing and make a judgment on it. You've got to spend some time with it. So, yeah, for sure. I'm glad I did.
Excellent. It wouldn't surprise me if the next album from Deafheaven sounds nothing like this. You come across as a type of band that are just willing to go, you know what, let's try something different. Let's do something. Let's go a different direction. Would not surprise me at all. Okay, so ratings for Infinite Granite from Deafheaven. After the first few listens, I was probably sitting about a 4.5 on this album. And I was thinking, like, when I was listening to it, is this as unique as some of their previous albums? Like, before, I knew when I was listening to Deafheaven, without a doubt, when I heard a track, I was like, that's Deafheaven, straight away. And there's a lot of bands, especially right now, doing the kind of dreamy, kind of shoegaze thing. And this is, although this is like extremely well done, it does have likenesses to some of those other bands. But in saying that, I'm still certain I could pick out, one of these tracks in a lineup and say, yeah, that's Deafheaven. That being said, this album didn't hit me like Sunbather did or Ordinary Corrupt Human did. It's really fucking good, and I liked it way more than I expected, but it didn't evoke the feeling that I had when I listened to those albums. So I think even I'm now at like 6-7 listens to this album, I'm probably going to stick with my initial thoughts on this, so I'm going to go 4.5. Duncan?
Oh, it's a 5. It's a 5. I fucking love this. Yeah, I absolutely love this. Front to back, I think, and even other things that I didn't even mention, like that Kyle touched on. Synths, it's a big thing for me, and they're perfectly there. This is the textbook picture perfect album to give anyone who has a synth player who is not prominent in the band, that is there to add what a synth player should be doing in this genre, which is texture, tone, and content. It's all the way through this album. I also think the songs flow incredibly well into each other. This is another one where I just kind of feel like it's that intoxicating journey that you're kind of use the word journey that you go when you listen to the album. Yeah, this to me is, I don't think this is necessary at the moment. It's not my favourite Deafheaven album. I don't even know if I give my favourite Deafheaven album a 5. That's the thing I'm thinking about it. But this is definitely a 5. I can see me a year down the road saying this is my favourite Deafheaven album though, like comfortably. I think this is everything that I want in a band that continues to defy the box that it's put in, the genre, the class of it. They constantly defy it, and whether or not it's the most original sounding thing that's around just now, I think Deafheaven have put their own spin on it, and Yeah, I don't think people are going to be as forgiving as Kyle says when it comes to the second or third listen. I just saw that backlash to Gojira, and I was like, it's one song with a rock riff. Come on, the fuck. It's not as if they've abandoned that sound completely. Fans are just passionate about what they like, and they don't like it when they perceive their favourite band selling out. And I can see people perceiving that Deafheaven is sold out, but I think they think that this sort of music sells a lot more than it does. It really, really, really doesn't sell that much. So I still think they're on the fringes. They're just
probably sells more than black metal. Let's be honest.
I think Sunbather shifted a lot of units. I think it really, really did. I'll be interested. I give it a 5. I can't wait to see where this ends up end of year for publications. Because I think some will do it's Deafheaven, it's the obvious choice. I think some of them will quietly omit this from a top 10 list without making reference and hoping that no one notices. So, yeah, 5 for me. I think this is fucking great. Well done, guys, honestly.
Nice.
I want the t-shirt with that artwork on it. So next time we're recording, I'll probably have the t-shirt with that artwork on it. So.
Nice. Kyle, what about yourself?
First listen, I was going to give this a 3 because I didn't gel with it. Second listen, 3.5 because I liked it a bit more. Third listen, up to a 4.
Nice.
And I'm going to give it a 4.5 because of the production, because it's absolutely stunning production on this. It's organic, it's not raw, it's not crap, it's perfectly for the band. There's no fuckery, none that I could detect. If there is, it's very well hidden, very tastefully done. So I think it's a 4.5 album. It's really, 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 really good. I actually really liked it after quite a few listens.
Awesome. So Deafheaven's Infinite Granite drops on August 20th via Sargent House. If you want to check out the band, you can check them out at facebook.com/Deafheaven. I'll put a little link in the description below to their Facebook, to the Bandcamp, so you can check out the album when it drops. Give it a pre-order. Let us know what you think. If you've heard any of the singles, put some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you so much for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.